Hey folks, it's Rob Flux here with another Sunday session. Tonight is open mic night, which means it's your chance to ask me whatever question it is that you like, and I'm going to do my very best to try and help you on your property development journey. Now, that said, in order to do that, what we are going to do is submit your questions early. Click on the link below, propdev.info/open-mic. If you do that, that allows me to look at the question and find whatever research I need to do in order to prepare for the event. So that said, we've got a bucket load of questions this week, and so I'm looking forward to a cracker of a show. So very first question comes from Pat, and Pat says, how do I start in property development without a builder's license? Well, interesting question, Pat, because that's a little bit of a misnomer where a lot of people think that you actually need to have a builder's license. As property developers, we're not actually building. And as a matter of fact, what we're actually doing is we're engaging builders to build on our behalf after we see all of the relevant development approvals, etc. So you won't actually require a builder's license unless you are the one who's actually doing the construction of the dwelling in, in that instance. Now, a developer's license is a different thing altogether, though. So a developer's license in all estates around the country, at this moment in time, there is no requirement for a developer's license. Now, Queensland is trying to introduce a developer's license. It is not yet in legislation, and there's a whole bunch of things that may or may not apply, I guess, to developer exemptions. But watch this space. Developer's license might actually be required. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not doing some of the tasks that might be deemed to be building works, okay? But as owners of the project, as the developer, we are allowed to perform some of those tasks along the way. We just can't pick up a hammer and construct the dwelling ourselves. So you won't actually need a builder's license at this point in time, nor a developer's license at this point in time. So good question, Pat. Thank you very much for that. Mick has got a question. Mick says, how do you determine your next property investment step? Background, I have a little super, so need to use otherwise retirement in 10ish years. Do I lift my house to develop a rental dwelling stairs, or do I build a rental investment on land I have in regional North Queensland, another separate investment property? Very confused about how to determine what is the best way. Huge thanks. That's from Mick. Now, I'm going to start with a couple of things here. Firstly, I have to say, Mick, I can't legally tell you what to do. So I have to provide, I guess, just some educational knowledge here for you to try and start to apply. Now, everything that you're asking about is all about investment. Now, investment is a passive approach. So buy a property, wait some time, and let the market do the heavy lifting. Now, you're talking about doing some very, very minor forced. Okay, the forced value onto the site is more development process. So that's where we use our knowledge, skills, and actually force value on. So that's the property development process, and they're two completely different mindsets. Investment perspective, I guess you're wanting to do the research on where is a good place where you get either capital growth or cash flow. Okay, so you need to make those decisions on both of those, and you need to, given that you've got some investment properties already in place, ask yourself the question, are they giving recommended outcomes? So if I wanted capital growth, is that what I wanted? If not, what's the likelihood of actually changing in the future? And if not, what is the likelihood that I do better with skills that I've got at this point in time? Now, if the answer to any of those questions is, hey, it's not performing well, or hey, I don't think it's going to perform in the future, and you could do something better with the money by investing that money somewhere else, then the answer is pretty obvious. If, however, the question, if it's yes, it is I guess performing as intended, then the question is it going to yes? Is the answer. Safely say, well, I want to keep there until you ask yourself the last question: do I know how to use the money better? And so it might pay that the asset's performing well. It's going to keep performing well. So there's no reason to sell it until I get the skills, I guess, in order to actually overtake the way that the investment is already performing. So I guess there's the two approaches, mate. Is it investment that you want, long-term, let the market do the lifting, or is it forced value that you want, in which case you need to learn the skills in order to apply it? Either way, look at the asset as to how it's currently performing. and ask yourself the question whether or not you think it's going to keep performing that way, or do you think you could actually reapply the cash somewhere else? Now, all of that is pretty generic advice. Then you've got, I guess the places that you've said is you're doing it in regional Queensland. Okay, so you've got, do I lift my regional Queensland property? I've got vacant land in regional Queensland as well. So land doesn't generate rent, so land itself it's costing you to actually hold that. So the capital growth needs to be higher because it can't be cash flow. Now, regional areas, you want to ask yourself two very basic questions. Okay, you can do this into a Google search. So just Google this. Okay, so population of, insert city or region. Okay, then do a second Google search, population number. Okay, then do a second Google search, population growth rate of name of region or city that you're actually trying to do. And what that's going to give you is I guess a current population and what is the growth of that area. That's going to give you the demand actually coming into the area. Now, when you understand this, the area, enough supply to meet that demand. What you're going to find in those regional areas is chances are there's very small populations. Rate might be relatively high, 1-ish, 2-ish%, but on a very, very small number. So it might only be 50 people, 100 people moving into an area, which is not many opportunities for that capital growth requirement. They're the sort of things that you want to be looking at from investment perspective, and especially if you're thinking about developing, you want to make sure there's enough people wanting to take the stock that you're wanting to create. Okay, next question, Tiffany. This is a little bit long. So Tiffany says, "Hi Rob, what's the best strategy or type of get started on that will enough job ASAP? I need to replace my Rage 80K." Now she goes on to splitter, subdivision, etc. I would need to do a low or no money down strategy first project, this being my first development, but could invest by this year to get a higher percent. Confident I can get investors, money partners, etc. for the JV. I'm just wondering what is the best, quickest projects I should be going after to get going. Also, I may want to go full time. At what point do I think about getting into the next project to create the income for the future? Thanks very much and look forward to your feedback. Tiffany, you've actually got a couple of questions layered into this. So I'm going to try and break it down, I guess, as simple as humanly possible. I guess there's what is the potential development strategy for you? Okay, and I have a whole bunch of things that I like to consider money rules, and I won't go into every single one of those questions here because that in itself a whole bunch of time. But you want to start to ask your questions like, how long do I wait for my first payday, right? And if the answer question is, hey, I can wait 10 years, then an investment strategy might work for you, okay? If the answer is I can wait 2 years, then it might be a townhouse or a duplex type approach. If it's in 12 months, then you need projects that are much, much shorter in duration. Now, one of the things that you need to consider is because it's shorter in duration, chances are the cash return that you're going to get out of it won't be anywhere near as high. So you might, with regards to getting the money back, but it might not be the large cash that you're actually hoping for. So you may have to do more projects in order to do that. So the trade-off is, do I need the, I guess, the quick hit, sugar hit, or do I guess, can I play the long game and at the finish? Now, there's lots of other money questions that you're going to start to ask yourself, such as, have the deposit? Do I have the serviceability? Do I actually run the deal? And if not, and in many instances don't have that, do I negotiate outcomes? Do I know 7 low or down strategy? Those sorts of things. When you start to think about the answer to those, can I do it anyway? So strategy for your first one. In July, I have some cash coming back. So if you feel the deal today, then it might take you 3 or 4 months to find it, in which case you're at July, in which case you could probably use your own cash, right? So people think this is a quick win, right? So this is, what do you call it, a get rich quick scheme. It's not. This is learning a new career. You've got to put the time, effort, and energy into that. Don't think that you're going to get a massive hit out of it, but the success happens at the tail when you're very good at it and you can apply it over again repeatedly and consistently. So some of the pros and cons of different development strategies. So firstly, many development strategies out there, but functionally, there are only 2 paths that will actually allow you to start small and then start to scale your business by doing a slightly larger version of the same thing. Okay, so subdivisions and what I'm calling multi-res, which could be either townhouses or, I guess, apartments. Okay, so really 3 product types, but 2 paths in order to get there. Now, allow me to explain. If you're doing a 1 to 2 subdivision, you can do 1 to 2, 1 to 4, 1 to 6, 1 to 20, or 1 to 20. There are examples of people that build cities using the subdivision process, so stepping up. Equally, from a duplex, then a 4-pack, then a 6-pack, 10, 20, etc., start to scale. With us, you could start with villas on ground, 5-story, 10-story, etc. So all of these either scale out or scale up, but either way, they are scaling. So you want to find yourself a development strategy, and ideally start with one and then get better at the same one as you go. Now, I guess some of the other things to think about might be, have you got the cash to get into those deals up front? So if you're going into a deal that's going to take yourself 2 years and going to have some construction elements to that, then you need to have a lot more cash up front. So when you start to ask yourself those money rules that I talk about, then you to actually understand, well, what is not possible. So when you understand what is not possible, then what is the one that is what you want to do? So the example I gave before, if you can't wait 2 years, then you can't do a townhouse approach, for example, which means that I probably want to do the subdivision path. Can wait 2 years, then both of them are still in play, right? So have I got the cash to run the deal? Again, you've got a larger project, then you start to rule one out. If you do have the cash, then both of them are start to still be in play. Do I want to do construction elements? What's my risk profile? And when you start to do, what you're looking for is, what is the decision that rules out a strategy? Then whatever's left over, but hopefully it gives you the thinking that you want to go into to get there. Hi, suggestion for you, Tiffany. Make sure you come one of our events. We run these all the way around the country. So we run meetups in Brisbane, Sydney, and at the end of every event, we do a list of small groups, and you can ask people, hey, how did they develop a strategy? What were the money rules that they asked themselves? They start to do that. Look at the success of other people and understand that an effort and journey in order. Now, I'm hosting insights. You can turn up to these events either physical or via, but we only do the masterminding, I guess, when you actually do the physical in events. So please come to one of those events, and can't wait to see you there. And if it's one of the events that I'm at, I'm more than happy to help you a little bit more one-on-one when I actually and what it is that you're actually trying to achieve, and I'll give you a little bit more targeted question. Either way, so you're Tiffany. Now, Sandy's got a question. Sandy says, hey, Rob, I'm new to property development work and I'm keen to buy a house and subdivide it into 2 so I can live out the other, or convert a garage or add a granny flat, but have very little cash and limited income. I think our mortgage lending experience have courses to this and doing work towards a real estate agent's license. would you give me as to how I might be able to achieve this, i.e. a joint venture, or should I sweat equity with someone else? Thanks. No. Again, can't give actual advice from a legal perspective, but you're looking at a couple of elements. So down into pieces. You're talking about trying to do a PR type project. So principal plus residence. So you want to make sure that you actually get some accounting advice on this. Okay, so super in order to do this, because if you can be horrific. So now when we talk about this kind of project, the ATO starts to look at your intent. What is your intent? Is your intent to use to profit? Are you, or is it that you're really, I guess, trying to use this as a one-off type exercise in order to pay down your principal residence and make it where you can actually afford to live? So go talk to your accountant. Now, what you've said here is you don't flip it. You want to actually keep both sides and actually rent it. So now you're turning it into, I guess, a little bit of a hybrid where you're actually doing the development process and then turning it into an investment. So the string that you put it in is going to be quite important. How you actually, I guess, exit that, what you do from a funding perspective, very messy, right? So to make sure that you're going to be compliant with the ATO's intentions. You also, in talking to the accountant, make sure you tell them not just your intention for this one project, but become a full-time developer. So if you're intending to become a full-time developer, then the ATO might look at with regards to, hey, it was just the first of many, many projects that you actually went to do. And even though you're wanting to keep some of it, are they actually going to be looking at this as a development, or are they looking at this as an investment that you manufacture actually doing? Very clear. Once you've had that chat with your accountant, capture that in writing, send a or an email to your accountant and actually say, as per our discussion, this is my intentions, this is my understanding of what you've said, so that you've got an audit trail. Can and do change over time. And so you want to have an audit trail to say, look, this was my intention at this point. If you have no intention, for example, of being a developer later on, write this very, very second, and then later on you turn into one. What you don't want is the ATO to look at a track record of property developments and retrospectively apply that to the first one inadvertently, even though your intentions were different. So you firstly capture the conversation, have that conversation, and then secondly, capture it in writing as to the intent at the time. Now, recognize this, at least you've got the audit trail to say what you were trying to do at that point in time. Hope that helps, Sandy. Nick has got a question. Nick says, hey, I'm looking to do a 90-unit development in Lismore. Big stuff. Well done. Oh, Nick. Firstly, there's a couple of things here. Absolutely, you should be concerned about getting funding in. So firstly, there's the construction funding. Then secondly, the person that you're selling this to, they have to, I guess, purchase, and their residential lender will actually be caring about this being in a flood zone as well, and also at the end will be caring about it. So firstly, make sure that the site is completely flood immune, in particular instance, mate, because you may successfully get the construction funding, but you may not be able to sell the finished product to the incoming purchaser. So you need to do a whole bunch of homework on that. But there's a bigger problem that I see in Nick, and I guess I don't want to be alarmist here, but I want to get this out. And this really comes back to a comment I made just earlier in the conversation, and that is, I guess the supply and demand. So what is the population growth? And I said insert name of city. In this case, insert the name of Lismore. There are 44,000 1,276 people living in Lismore, Nick. So that is not a huge population, mate. Then the second Google search I said was, what is the growth rate of insert Lismore? And in this instance, it is a negative, so negative 0.19%. That is, more people are leaving Lismore than coming. So you're going to create stock in this particular area. Staying. Now, this is a bit of a tricky one because a lot of people want to stay, had their homes destroyed at in the city boundaries and just shuffle where they actually live. So there might be an opportunity there, but it's risky, Nick. So I want you to actually make sure that you're, taking note of that risk, and you've got some sort of mitigating factor in. It's a big project. So kahunas of steel if you take it on in a flooded area with that sort of negative population growth. But be very, very careful. Make sure you do your research. Make sure you understand what your competitors are actually doing. Are you going to be the first to those sorts of things? If you are successful, I think you're going to be mega successful. If you are not, what I'm worried about is going to be mega flop, mate. So do your homework. Take a whole bunch of care on that particular one. Milan says, hey, Milan, how are you? I want to do developments as a full-time gig. Have the equity, the number crunching skill, but the finance solutions for builds. Well, there's only one with that, Nick. It's not whether or not it's the best way. It's the only way, and that is that you're going to be dealing with someone that is going to be lending what they call terms. Okay, so commercial terms negotiate. So it's not get off the big banks rate where they're looking at your serviceability, but rather it's somebody who's looking at the profitability of the deal, and they look at the profitability of the assess you on that basis. And so serviceability becomes less of an issue. And in most instances, they will because what they understand is that a property development is a very cash flow heavy game, and that you need every towards running the project to ensure the project's success. They understand that. So as a result of that, they say, well, we'll allow you to capitalize that lend, but we're sharing a little bit of the risk of the project, and also we're foregoing that ongoing cash flow right now in order to put it to the end. So the interest rates tend to be higher, and also equity in the deal. Okay. So commercial lend terms. Now there's a whole people out there who specialize in these commercial cases, and this is that will also lend on commercial. Either way, it is a commercial construction loan that you're actually looking for, my friend. So if you can do that, they can the equity that you've got, and they can use that as security in order to fund. There are 3 phases that you need funding. Okay, so there's the acquisition phase, there's the construction phase, and there's also any stock that you intend to keep ongoing. So the residual stock phase. So what you need to work out is, can I get through acquisition mode, then through to construction mode? They're the 2 phases that you're actually looking at. Now, lenders doing construction lending, they're in that second phase, the construction phase. The actual acquisition phase, a little bit here. Okay, most of those construction lenders don't want to play in that space. And the reason why in that space is you don't yet have a development approval. They don't know whether the council is going to approve it. They don't know what conditions council is going to approve it under. So it's very, very risky for them to get involved at the acquisition stage. So what EP tend to do is they go to a residential lender for the initial acquisition. There's still a house on the particular property, so you can residential loan. They get their development approvals, and then they refinance lender. So you may have to do that, or come up with some creative acquisition plan where you can defer the settlement until after the approval is in place. So it could be a contract, it could be all sorts of things that is basically going to kick the can down the road till the settlement actually occurs after development approval is in place. So hoping that helps you, mate. Will be higher, but it does mean that from a serviceability perspective, if you're not assessed, it also means that from I guess a cash flow requirement, you don't need to fund all of that as you go through monthly installments. Next question, David says, where do I start in Sydney? Whoa, that question. It's a huge question. That's probably going to go all the way back to, I guess, with Mick, was the difference between investing. You want to be an investor, small amount of effort, let the market do the heavy lifting, or be a developer. You need to learn some skills, you need to apply your knowledge, you need to put a whole lot of effort in, but you're going to force value property. Now, on both, I did 20 years of investment and 17 years now as in development. I guess I'm looking at the world through a slightly different lens because I can see the differences between the two worlds, either in one camp or the other, where I've actually sat in both. For me, development approach, because I can get in and out of the project much quicker. I get out in very similar market times, and I'm manufacturing the profit, which means I get to control the outcome as much as I can. I use that to manufacture my profit, and then where I can, I'll then hold on to stock as, I guess, as a whole investment, because I manufacture profits and allow it to grow as an investment over time. So I take the high in doing that. Now, for you personally, where do you sit? Well, do you want to go to that level of effort? You need to put a lot of effort in. If you want to do property development, my guidance to you is you need to put in 15 hours a week towards learning this. It's a new career, it's a new skill. This is not a get. If you want to start to learn this process, make sure that you actually start to come to working events. As I said, we run these all the way around the country in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. If you think that you want to become a developer, okay, then there's paths for you. Firstly, I have a free course. That's the wrong link. I have a free course, and I can find the free course link. Whoops, this. My bad. 7-step formula to find freedom. So it's freecourse.com.au, and this is giving you some insights into the pathway or the front to help you to actually understand both your starting position, your intended goals, start to choose your developments, and then move forward. Now, if that then starts to be something, just make sure you start turning up to our meetings and that sort of thing, and that's going to give you seeing other people do it, get a feel for whether or not that's something that you feel that you can also do. You can look at the catalog of all the recordings to see where people are successful and that sort of thing in projects and the lessons learned. So see plus your vote. If it does, and then you want to then start to follow that, we have a full 12 education and mentoring program. It's called the Property Development Formula. I'm not going to boast. It is an application-only process. You need to make sure that into this process. Otherwise, not going to do justice. And because of that, you in our program. But if you're committed to the process, please chat, and we'll happily let you know what's involved in that process. I'm working on a single townhouse development project, i.e. a new townhouse behind existing dwelling, my principal place of residence. So depending upon your council, that might actually be referred to as a duplex. Okay, I faced issues with getting funding as the banks valued the property as in one line, and that as the subdivision is not done. Hence, they took 20% off the total valuation. I wasn't aware of this before. Anyway, what this means is I cannot put the required funding to build the house. Question: is there another way around this? It's not sure if private funding would be interested. So firstly, it's not clear here and whether or not you're actually doing a subdivision or whether or not you're doing a duplex or whether you're actually doing a townhouse. So I'm not sure based on how you've actually said this. So it's a bit hard to give specific guidance. However, let me just talk to in one line comment talking about. What they're talking about is what happens if the project through or does get through to completion, but you have to sell it at a fire sale because you can't make the final payment, for example. Okay, and when they're selling it at a fire sale, if two titles don't actually exist, then they're going to sell it to an individual investor, and that individual investor is going to want some level of discount in order to pick it up. That's why they've given you the 20% haircut on the valuation process. Okay, so you've been smart and gone back and said, hey, I want to, I guess, put that subdivision in first. Okay, but I just noticed some extra comments on your question, so I might continue with that. You then gone in to say, since then I changed my planning permit and added a clause that lets me subdivide first. That way I'll get the required valuation when I have the separate titles. Very good. Okay, so it is a subdivision. Thank you. However, because there is a common area, the council requires me to build the entire the house is built later. Are there any ideas around this? I'm in. Shadman, very good, mate. I've actually had this exact scenario, and let me explain it. What it sounds like to me is that the driveway is actually common to both the front and the rear house. Okay, so that's what it sounds like, and because of that, one of them will either own it and have an easement over it, or alternatively, it's going to be owned as part of the community title. In which case, or a strata of some description. In which case, council wants to make sure that it's actually in place up front in order for them to actually issue that title. Now, as you've gone and rightly said, I guess because it's at the rear, you're going to have a whole bunch of concrete trucks and building materials being delivered and a whole bunch of stuff that's going to go over the drive over the top of that driveway after it's been constructed. And so it's likely to get destroyed. So you've got two choices here, my friend. Now, neither of them are ideal, but they are the only two options that you actually got. So option number one is to build the thickness and the strength of that driveway to such a standard that when the heavy machinery drives over the top of it, it won't actually cause the driveway to crack or crumble. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't get surface. That thicker reinforcing, it's going to cost you a little bit more to actually do that process. At the end of it, there might be some cosmetic damage that you might need to go back and clean up. So you might, for example, I guess, have to go back and resurface that. So any of the, if you were to put a, like a, I'm trying to think what the right, like I'm going to say varnish, but varnish is the wrong word. If you can actually sealant. That's what the word I'm looking for, sealant. So if you're going to put a sealer over the top of the driveway and then all the concrete trucks over it, all the sealant's going to get damaged. So when it's finished, go back and resurface that. You might sandblast that back and then reseal the driveway and then make it look good again. So that's option number one. Option number two is go the opposite way. Make it wafer thin, super thin, with no steel reinforcement or anything like that. So it's really a surface level driveway. And anyone physically inspecting it will actually say, okay, it looks like a driveway, smells like a driveway, that sort of thing. But be super careful because it's going to crack and crumble super easily. Now, if that happens, then I guess when the concrete trucks drive over it, it's actually going to disintegrate, and that will underneath start to become what is called road base. Okay, so there are your two options. Do you put some, I guess, a very, very cheap wafer thin level, in which case you kind of get the tick in the box from a compliance perspective, or do you go and over engineer it? Now, that really comes down to what is the condition that council gave you in giving that driveway. Did they say just put in a driveway? Or did they say put in a driveway that meets these minimum specs? Now, if it's the just put in a driveway option, then you can put it into any spec that you actually like. You could probably get away with the lighter one. If it's instead it needs to be this minimum spec, then you're probably going to have to over-engineer it and then go back and resurface it. So Shadman, hoping that helps you in that particular instance, mate. Next one, Lachlan. Lachlan says, based on your experience in property development over several years, can you please share your opinion on deal finding in the current market when compared to previous years? Very good. Thank you, Lachlan. Just give me 2 secs. Okay, so deal finding. Look, you need to understand, firstly, the market operates in cycles, okay? It goes up and it goes down, okay? And us as property developers, we're buying in one market. Let's just say we're buying it on the way up, but then our project's going to run some time and we have to go over the top and we might be selling it in a downwards market, as an example, okay? Because most of our projects are going to take somewhere between 12 months and 2 years to actually run, sometimes longer. So we need to understand where we are in that market cycle. Now, Joe Public, on the other hand, they have a different point of view. They understand where the market is as well, right? But they're looking backwards at the previous results that were just achieved, thinking that they can get the exact same thing. So when the market is going up, they're looking backwards going, hey, that's the evidence we've actually seen in the market. But what they're seeing there is proof points that are actually lower than what they've actually achieved. So that when they get valuations and things like that, it's actually at a lower point in time. Now, as we go over the peak, right? As we go over the peak, what they're seeing, the previous one is higher, right? So we see the market going down, but they see the evidence as the previous one going up and down. So it always gets tricky when we have to consider both where we want to go and also the point of view that the public who is selling us the property actually sees at the same time. Now, we've been on a little bit of downward trajectory of late, which means that the public is looking backwards at the evidence being a little bit higher in sales values. So they're wanting to hold on to those high price points. But we're looking at this potentially being close to the bottom of the market, close-ish, and looking at turning. So we're looking at this going, hey, it might be a good buying opportunity if we can pick it up on the swing, right? But the question is, if the vendor's price point is here, we get down and then up, do we think in 2 years' time it's actually going to go past their position? See, this is about the same level. Go past it and keep going. That's the point of view you've got to take is, do I think that's going to happen? Now, if you're only running a short project, you might only get some of the upswing. If you're doing a long project, you might get all of the upswing. Are we in an upswing at all? You've got to make that determination. Now, I have previously run an event only a couple of weeks ago called Over the Horizon, and that talks about how I read the market and the things that I look at for leading indicators as to where I think the market is actually going. Personally, I've got a bullish view of the market where I think it's actually going. So I'm quite optimistic that we're actually heading in the right direction. But you need to make that determination yourself. Okay, don't rely on my homework. You're going to need to do your own homework on doing that. But understand that the public is looking at the past, and we are looking at the future, and somewhere in between is where it is. Now, all of that said, your question was, what do we think of deal finding in this particular market? Well, the tricky part is vendors' expectations are high at the moment, okay? But there is opportunity because some of those vendors are starting to, because of high interest rates, some of those vendors are actually getting to the point where they've got no choice, but they have to sell. So rather than being, opportunistic in taking advantage of people, because I very much don't condone in that, but rather find out what their pain point is and see if there's a way you can actually help them. As an example, they might be $40,000 in arrears on their mortgage at the moment, and the bank is knocking on their door. Now, they don't need to, pay the entire loan off. They just need to pay the $40,000 that they're in arrears. So are you able to help them with that $40,000 today, right? And if you do that, it gets the bank off their back, right? And that might buy you the time to actually run the project as you're looking for. So right now, I see huge opportunities to work with vendors to get very, very creative solutions. So from a deal finding perspective, this is a cracking time, my friend. And depending upon where you're located around the country, there are huge opportunities that are actually opening them up at this point in time. So if you're wanting to be a deal finder, mate, this is one of the best times I've ever seen for a very, very long period of time. So Learn the skills. If you don't have the skills, go learn the skills. You need to learn how to negotiate. You need to understand how to negotiate and pull out what are the needs of the vendor, not the wants. Everyone wants more than they actually deserve. What are their needs? What do they need to solve their current pain points right now? Firstly, what are their pain points? You understand that if you can meet their needs, then you can almost certainly negotiate a very, very creative outcome, which I guess an incoming purchaser would be very, very happy to pay some level of finder's fee. Now, depending upon the state that you are in, you are almost certainly going to need to have a buyer's agent's license in order to flick it on for a finder's fee. If you do not have a buyer's agent's license, or you don't know who to on-flick the deal to, that's where Development Sites Australia comes into play. So Development Sites Australia is one of my businesses where we work as buyer's agents. And we look at the 25,000 members of our community who are all looking for deals, and we say we create a marketplace for them to actually transact those deals. So if you're looking to flick for a finder's fee, we will engage as a buyer's agent for the incoming purchaser, and we will negotiate with you, and we will actually share our finder's fee commission with you for actually bringing us the deal. Okay, but the deal has to actually be a deal, and that's the key. So make sure that does actually work. Hoping that helps. Next question. So that was Lachlan. So next question, Craig. Craig says, hi, Rob. I understand there are pros and cons to completing a development under a principal place of residence, and it's not a particularly strong business decision. However, would you mind discussing the pros and cons of this approach? Thanks, Craig. Craig, I did actually touch on this a little bit earlier on. I'm just trying to think who I actually spoke about that to. I think that was to Sandy. So I've covered some of these things, but let me cover a little bit more, okay? The ATO looks at your intent. So if your intent is that this is a one-off transaction and you're never going to do any development projects ever again, then doing this as a principal place of residence has merit. I'm not going to say it can be done, but it has merit, and your accountant is the one to actually sign that off. If, however, you have a pattern of doing projects, you've done a couple of development projects before, and you're going to do a couple of projects afterwards, the ATO is going to look at the pattern of this and say, hang on, mate, you're clearly a property developer all the time, and you're having a go at us here, just trying to claim a loophole. And they may retrospectively say, we think that that was actually a pure development. And yes, you might be living in one side, but we don't want to give you all of the beneficial interest that might actually be associated. So you need to get your accountant to review your specific circumstances to see whether or not that actually applies. Now, that's the first part. Second part is if you're doing it as a principal place of residence, that means that you're going to be doing it in your own personal name in most instances, which means that anything that you sell will be deemed as income tax. So depending upon what your tax rate is, if you're on 32 cents on the dollar, then it's going to start at 32 cents on the dollar and potentially breach the threshold that will get you to 42 cents on the dollar. So from a tax perspective, you might be paying a bucket load of tax in doing it as a PPR, even on the one property that you actually sell. So you might be better off paying normal GST and normal company tax, because it's possibly going to work out a little bit cheaper for you from a tax perspective. Now, only your accountant can do that math for you, or you can do it if it's super good at understanding the problem and doing the math equation on that. But I want you to understand that it might be false economy trying to do it in your own name. The other thing is, because it's in your own name, from an asset protection perspective, I guess you still own an asset in that development. You've sold an asset. You still have a 6-year ongoing warranty obligation that asset, the roof won't leak, the foundations won't sink, all those sorts of things. So you might be exposed from an asset protection perspective as well. So you might need to chat to your solicitor and go, hey, is this a good idea for me to do this as well? Next one, Emma. Emma says, I see some blocks of land for sale without driveways and others with driveways. Why does this happen? And does this affect the price of vacant land blocks enough that we should take note of the suburb analysis process? Emma, good question. Look, that really comes down to the conditions that were given by the council at the time when the development approval was actually made. And I guess in a some councils will say you must put a driveway in, but what that then does is it informs the incoming I guess person where their house needs to be located in order to get access to a driveway, right? In other instances, that is not there, and so the person can have any driveway design they might actually want. Now, why does it happen? Well, because there might be certain obstacles that actually occur. So, for example, there might be a street tree, there might be a telephone pole, there might be some sort of obstacle that has to be navigated around, and council says, well, I will only accept a block of land if you've safely navigated around that street tree or around that stormwater gully or around that I guess that telephone pole or whatever it is, and if you put the driveway in this particular location, then and only then will we accept that you've navigated safely around it. Okay, because the incoming purchaser, they don't have any control where that incoming purchaser puts their driveway in most instances, and they want to make sure that the incoming purchaser is well informed of the issues and challenges. In other situations, there are no obstacles, and so council says, well, we don't need to dictate where the driveway goes in this particular instance, but rather the incoming person can put whatever house design wherever the garage is that they want, and we don't need to control that. So typically, that's why you're going to see the differences between them. In other instances, some councils will just mandate that every single block has to have the driveway, or what is called the crossover, sitting there. So typically, that's why you're going to see those. Hope that helps, Emma. Next one, Ben. I'm focused on duplex developments. When raising capital from money partners, either cash or equity, what are the options to secure for security and the relative pros and cons of each? Okay, Ben, fundamentally, and I have to be super careful, I can't give guidance, I can't give legal advice here, but fundamentally there are only three kinds of security that you can, or four kinds of security. One, a mortgage. Two, a caveat. Three, a personal guarantee, and four, unsecured. Okay, fundamentally, those four will apply. Now, a mortgage, the pro and con of a mortgage is secured against the title and enables the holder of that mortgage in order to it means that they've actually got a right to potentially sell down the property if you don't meet the terms and conditions of the loan or joint venture agreement or whatever it is that you've actually got. But if you don't meet the terms and conditions of that, they have the ability to sell down the property in order to reclaim the cash. Okay, so generally you're going to have what is a breach term, and if you breach the agreement, then that's when they would actually trigger that. Okay, now because they are what is called a secured creditor. So a secured creditor means that they're going to get paid first. Okay, so there's a first mortgage, second mortgage, third mortgage, etc. And as it seems, as the numbering system implies, first mortgage person would get paid first, second mortgage person would get paid second, third would get paid third, etc., etc. So the higher order of magnitude of your mortgage, the lower on the totem pole you are from a priority basis. And they have what they call a deed of priority, which is, I guess, the order that actually then gets paid back in. Okay, so but that person has the ability to sell down the property. The next level of security is a caveat. Now, a caveat sits on the title, and it sits on the title as a black mark. Okay, it has no power to sell the property, but instead it has the power to stop the property from being sold or stop anything that will actually, I guess, have a requirement to interact with the title itself. So, for example, if you're doing a subdivision and you need to tear up the original title and reinstate two brand new titles, the caveat is going to sit there over the original title, and they cannot do anything with that until you as a caveat owner sign off on that being a requirement. Okay, so now it does not allow you to sell it, but what it does do is it alerts you to the fact that somebody is trying to sell it, for example, and that in order for them to actually sell it, you need to sign off on the fact that you have been, I guess, appropriately compensated or dealt with in that process. But they may not choose to sell it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So you have no idea when you're going to get that cash back. But at some point in the future, when they sell it, somebody will tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, it is your turn, I guess, Ben, to get paid back. Okay, or what is it that's going to be deemed satisfactory to you in order to pay that back? The next one, a personal guarantee. Now, personal guarantee is a promise that that person will actually pay you through all of their assets and liabilities. Now, they've not said, hey, I'm going to sell this property or I'm going to sell this property, but what they've said is somewhere, somehow, I'm going to shuffle the decks in order to get you the cash that you require. So if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that they've actually got some assets and liabilities in the first place, because if they've got none, personal guarantee is not really worth much. Okay, so make sure that you've actually assessed their personal guarantee, their assets and liabilities, and actually make sure that it's in their own personal name, because it's not in their personal name and they're instead a trustee over something, they don't technically own it. Because they don't technically own it, they are not forced to sell. Now, they have a legal obligation that they have to give you the cash, but how they come up with that, that's going to take quite a bit of a process for you to actually do. You have to take them to court. You're going to have court orders to actually mandate what they actually do to sell down. But you won't be able to control that process other than through court actions. And the last one is no guarantee. Okay, so that you've got an unsecured loan, in which case you're really just trusting that this person's a really nice person. So fundamentally, they're your four options. Can you sell it down? Can you stop them from selling it down? I guess, do you trust that they're going to shuffle stuff around in order to pay you, or do you just think they're a nice guy or girl or person? So they're your options. Hopefully that gives you some insights. There's a lot more intricacies to all of that. Make sure that you do speak to a solicitor in that regard to see what some of the idiosyncrasies are. Next one, Justin. G'day, Rob. I saw in a previous presentation you mentioned you're working on setting up a fund of sorts for providing finance to developers. Is it still in the pipeline? Do you think it actually will come to fruition? Any hints on possible timings, etc.? Cheers. Justin, absolutely. We're trying to work on that. Look, there's quite a bit involved from a legal perspective. We need to set up what is called an AFSL, Australian Financial Services License, in order to do that. That takes time, and there's a couple of different ways to actually achieve that. I'm not going to go into the intricacies, but we're looking at a number of different ways to actually solve that particular problem. What we don't want to do is we don't want to go off half-cocked. And at the same time, whilst we're trying to seek that AFSL license, we're trying to seek a number of potential wholesale investors that would actually be, intending to actually play in this space, and optimistic of us actually landing some of those. But it's a chicken and egg. They won't land until we have the AFSL, and we won't have the AFSL until we have enough people interested to make it land, because the cost of actually setting this up is quite significant. So look, it's taking longer than I would like, Justin, to be brutally honest, but it is still definitely our intent to actually do. But it's a chicken and egg scenario at the moment, and I guess I've just probably got to lay an egg and hopefully we can grow a chicken. Last question. Augusto says, hi, Rob. If you were in the position to either buy a home for your family or buy a plot of land with the potential to subdivide and build your own home, what would you do? Augusto, this is a tricky question because you've asked me what I would do, and what I would do would completely change based on this level of circumstances that I'm walking into. See, I'm a very, very experienced investor with 20 years and a very experienced developer with over 17 years behind me. So I'm coming into this position from a fully informed position. Whereas you, I don't know what your position is. I don't know if this is your first time you've ever done development. I don't know if you've set yourself up well, those sorts of things. But my inference is, just from the way your question's asked, that you've not done this before. Now, the temptation, okay, let me go back a couple of steps. There's only really four reasons to buy a property at all, okay? So the first one, lifestyle, okay? Lifestyle is your principal place of residence. It has no reason at all to do with money. It is always about how close is it to school, how close is it to shops, how close is it to my work, how is my lifestyle going to be impacted by living in this particular property? Has it got the amenity that I'm looking for, etc.? And many cases we will get emotionally invested in that particular purchase, and it doesn't necessarily make commercial sense to actually do. The next one, capital growth. Are we in a high capital growth area? This goes towards our net wealth. Okay, so net wealth is how many assets do we actually have in our name? What are they actually worth? Okay. Now, the problem is with net wealth is you can't eat an asset, right? So you can be a millionaire on paper, but still be cash flow poor. Okay. So if you're trying to grow your net wealth, at some point you need to consider transitioning that across into a cash flow type strategy. So number 3 is cash flow. Okay, so if you're doing a cash flow strategy, then you're going to be positive cash flow. That is going to go towards paying down your expenses and potentially giving you a wage if you're getting enough cash flow out of that. And the last one is manufactured profits. So this is way number 4. That is the property development process, where we can actually force value onto the property through our own sweat equity and our own knowledge and skills and effort. Okay, so they're the 4 reasons to buy it. Now, what you're talking about there is you want to have a lifestyle goal, and you're asking whether or not you could apply so if you did it for pure lifestyle, mate, this is purely a decision on emotions. Okay, if that's the case, if it's purely lifestyle, then the second question you said, well, what if I had a land, okay, and I could build my own home and sell one off, right? Now, in that instance, you're going to do a compromise, okay? So the compromise is, look, I might do the property development process. I might not get the exact home that I want, but I'll be able to sell down the other side and pay down some of my costs. So the net residual left over is not going to impact me for many, many years. Now, that's a personal decision, my friend. You need to look at your own personal circumstances and say, look, if am I and my spouse, are we really wanting the lifestyle that affords us this beautiful home, this big home all by itself, or can we compromise ourselves for the next 5 or 10 years, pay down, put some effort in, pay down some debt, have a home that's maybe not so perfect, but is affordable and gets us through our next phase in life. Okay. That, my friend, is a decision just for you, and I wish I could help you out in that. But they're the things that you need to, I guess, consider in assessing that circumstance. Now, that said, folks, that was our last question. And so if you want to ask me a question, we run these open mic nights on the first Sunday of every single month. Some months accepting, but predominantly that is the case. And what you need to do is you need to use the link below, propdev.info/open-mic. Ask your question in advance, and I'll do whatever I can to research in order to help you get, I guess, find the answer that you need. Now, that said, we run events all the way around the country, folks, in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide. Again, link is on the page down below, developernetwork.com.au/events. So we run them physically, and we also live stream them around the country. So no matter where you're located, you can always turn up and get a whole bunch of insights into how you can start your property development journey. Till then, folks, I hope to see you at one of our upcoming meetups or on our next Sunday session. Till then, bye for now.